Awesome. Hi, I'm Gabe. I'm the design lead for the digital member experience here at Oscar. Thank you all for coming and welcome. Oscar, I work with a team of wonderful designers, and their job is to make healthcare make sense. That is what we do here every single day. The team. This is us now 2 years ago at Halloween. We all dressed as Steve Jobs. And we actually all won that Halloween contest as Steve Jobs. This past year, we were all fonts. If you can see me on the left, or I guess the right, I was Wingdings. That was actually a very last minute costume. Anyways, back to Oscar. What makes Oscar Oscar is that we are both a technology and an insurance company. So in other words, we're a software firm that has access to all the great things about insurance. We can edit it, we can curate it, we can even make parts of the insurance experience completely obsolete. And one of the ways that we do that is through experimentation. I think that's really how we find a lot of our success. So first, let's define what experimentation means for us. On the surface, experimentation is just validating a hypothesis. It's having an idea of what you want to accomplish and setting out either through A/B testing, through other different means. But experimentation means a lot more to us. It's evolved to mean a lot more. It's actually something that allows us to be a thought leader at Oscar. It's a strategic tool. For us, experimentation has allowed us to elevate what design means at Oscar. It's also allowed us to not only have a seat at the table, but be heard and actually get to speak up. So let me explain a little bit about what that means. About a year ago, the design team found itself craving more. We were creating beautiful interfaces. We were creating the right websites, we were creating proper applications, we were working with our stakeholders, we were sticking to our roadmaps, and we were just being good designers and good citizens. But we felt like we could contribute more to the product. We wanted to evolve what design meant at Oscar. And the reason being is that we gained a unique perspective. As designers and product managers and engineers very close to the product, we started finding interesting opportunity. The challenge was the opportunity that we found, how do we actually act upon it? Which in turn became, how do we as designers move beyond contributing to just the aesthetic and beyond the interface and the application? And how do we begin becoming not just design thinkers, but business thinkers? How could design make decisions that make a measurable business impact at Oscar and across the organization? Just generally, I'll be honest, this is really, really hard for us. These opportunities had yet to be imagined. They were just within our product team, one designer, a few product managers, maybe a few engineers. We talked about it, but we never really understood what opportunity meant. And what we needed when we saw these opportunities was buy-in beyond the design team and beyond our closest product engineering and counterparts, particularly working in technology. At a company like Oscar that's literally filled with doctors and science and clinicians, we needed to back up and validate our decisions. So we turned to experimentation. I'm going to dip into a project that I think perfectly illustrates how experimentation has been successful for us and how ideally it could be successful for you. So about a year and a half ago, we completed our major app redesign, introducing 4 tabs: Home, Care, Inbox, and Profile. The Care tab, you could search for doctors, you could find hospitals, you could manage your appointments, you could even talk to a doctor through the Care tab. The Inbox, you could talk to your concierge team, which is Oscar's version of customer service. It means that you have 5 dedicated people at all times where you can talk to them about anything that's confusing about health insurance, your plan, your claims, anything, as well as talk to doctors and nurses that are a part of Oscar. And then you have your Profile tab, where you do insurance things. You manage your benefits. you look at your claims, you pay your bill, all the paperwork that comes with insurance. And then there was the Home tab. A tab, to be frank, and I'll be honest, that I pushed to leave out of the app redesign because it really did not have much purpose. For us, 3 of those entry points, the Find Care Now button, the Talk to a Doctor, and the Ask Us a Question, were actually repeated entry points to other parts of the application. The only thing that was unique was Sync Your Steps, and that is a very popular feature here at Oscar. It pays each Oscar member $1 every day that they walk 10,000 steps. So you can imagine people really like clicking that, and that's why we obviously put it on the home screen. But while the home screen was empty, there was so much potential. It is the first screen our Oscar members land on. And among folks closest to this product, we knew that there was more. We knew that there was a huge opportunity for us to really engage Oscar members. So the opportunity for us became clear. We were to create an environment of interconnected Oscar features. So what does that mean? It means taking all of the goodness of Oscar, meaning claims, prescriptions, talking to a doctor, everything that really makes Oscar Oscar, and delivering it to patients and Oscar members whenever they need. So contextual, relevant, personalized information at every point for each Oscar member. So something like you have an upcoming appointment with Dr. Viral Patel. We'll give it to you on the home screen. Or perhaps you search for an emergency room, and what we need to do is instead say, hey, you know what, maybe the ER is not right for you, why don't you go look at urgent care instead? Or perhaps we resurface what steps means. So instead of having users always see steps as the first entry point, maybe only when you are about to reach your steps count that we surface it. So trying to just begin changing users' behavior. But unfortunately, this was not on any roadmap. It was just our vision for the product. It was an opportunity that we found because we were so close to it, and one that we thought would have a meaningful impact not only on the experience, and not only the experience for our members, but also perhaps make a significant business impact. So obviously, how do we pull this off? We experimented. We began with a vision of where we ultimately wanted the home screen to go, and we like to call this our North Star. So what is a North Star? For us, it's a far-off envisioned future state of the product. And this is something that we really like to think about every day as we build products, is not only where is the product going to go today and tomorrow, but what can we see in 6 months? What can we see in a year? And a North Star is not linear. It's a moving organism, and it changes and breathes with every single decision that you make. So while it's useful to envision where you want the product to go, you have to be flexible and react to the outcome of each successive experiment. As is natural with the term North Star, the North Star was very distant for us. So on the left is the home screen of today, and on the right is some idea of the home screen of tomorrow. And as you can see, there's a lot of decisions to get from screen on the left to screen on the right. I'll break down what those major changes were. So first, introduce dynamic, relevant content to the home screen. So that is the Go Paperless card that you see. The second was actually bring searching, which is deep in the Care tab, pages up all the way to the home screen. And the third is to bring the timeline, which is a ledger that records every single interaction an Oscar member has, away from the Profile tab and onto the home screen. So what we were doing is trying to make a single entry point to bounce off into everything that makes Oscar Oscar. So there were so many things that had to go right, and I know I broke those down into 3 things. There's like 27 decisions and experiments that had to happen to pull that off. So we didn't do it all at once. We broke it down. So we broke down the home screen into bite-sized, sequential experiments, steps, and decisions. And we made them small enough that we could individually measure each and every experiment and understand their impact. And also each decision and each experiment required validation to go to the next. So sometimes we'd have an experiment that went really well and we could move on to the next step. Sometimes we had an experiment that unfortunately failed and we had to understand that the North Star would have to move because of that. So these bite-sized decisions are sequential and they really dictate where you're going to go. Another way that we approached our North Star in breaking down our experiments is through milestones. So this is actually a work in progress document. Please don't take photos, just kidding. But these are 7 steps of, I believe, our first stage, which is 7 different decisions in order to move the home screen to contain dynamic content. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But what makes milestones so useful is that it gets everyone on board. So this is a document that I generated with a product manager. I'll give him the credit, he made most of it. However, what we were doing is taking analysts and product managers and designers and also business leads, and we were all agreeing on where each step would go. So not only did it create trust within our product team, but it created trust within leadership because we were able to hold our decisions and each experiment sequentially accountable. Unlocking my notes. So, how did we do this? What was the sequence? First, we started with our plain home screen. We made one decision. What if we add one piece of content? Okay, how did that go? Does that work? What if we add 2 pieces of content? Okay. What if we remove the Find Care Now button, which again just takes you to another tab, which in turn pulls content up, which ideally engages members so that they can scroll? Interesting tidbit is that we actually had a lot of trouble with users scrolling down. I guess we used the phrase scrolling is for free, but it actually was not free for us. So that was a pivot that we had to take in a bite-sized experiment that we had to actually dictate the next. What if we completely remove the CTA Hi Gabriel and Find Care button? What if we remove the steps altogether? What if we pulled content up so much that you could see more than one piece of content at once? So all of these decisions over and over and over until we could slowly get to our North Star. Each decision impacting the next, each validated hypothesis or surprising learning, really dictating what our North Star meant. So we're actually in the middle of this work. The North Star on the right is still our North Star. We're actually in the middle of the effort of stage 2, which is taking our search and moving it first to the front of the Care tab, seeing how that works, and then ideally testing how that functions on the home screen. We're also, just in general, because this has worked so well, we've been given real resources from Oscar. We've been presenting multiple times now to the company, to our product teams, pitching why experimentation, and specifically a work like this, which was generated from individual designers, product managers, and engineers, and why that's valuable. So we've actually gotten buy-in not only to continue experimenting on mobile, but we're carrying out parallel experiments on web. So experimentation has really empowered us to find a voice and a seat at the table. And if you want a seat at the table, I suggest that you come to it with substance. And substance means understanding your product, understanding where it can go, having a grasp of where it is today and where it is tomorrow, and understanding the potential of your work. I hope that this resonates both with managers, individual contributors, leaders, wherever you are. I know the feeling that there is more to the work. I know the feeling that if you just had a little bit more time or a little bit more resources, or if they gave you 2 weeks to just design, that you'd be able to create the ideal experience and product. I always feel like that. But what I'd suggest and encourage you is to just hold your designs accountable, meaning test your hypothesis yourself. Get a few engineers together, get another designer together, get a PM together, and work through that problem together. And I promise you that work and effort will show, and you will get buy-in. Our North Star is actually not complete, as I said, and I'm not sure that it ever will be. Experimenting is a tool that unlocks the opportunity within your product. Always thinking ahead and always thinking beyond tomorrow enables you to really understand and give clarity about grounding decisions for today. So thank you. Please come work with us. Help us choose our next Halloween costume. Thank you.
All right, assuming this one is working, I'd love to open it up for Q&A as well. So if you have a question, please raise your hand.
Hello. I don't know if the mic is, it might be muted.
Hi. Yeah.
Yeah. So the question is, how did we measure success within each sequential decision? So we'd set essentially engagement levels, specifically for the content. So on each home screen, we would say, okay, if we had 5% increase engagement, then we could move on to the next. And we'd have to actually evaluate those against each prior card. So like I said, when we had 2 cards or pieces of content that were vertically scrolling, the second piece of content did terribly. So we actually pivoted the next experiment to, instead of vertical cards, go horizontal. Within search right now, we're in the process of running a 50-50 A/B test. One is placing the search input on the front of the care tab, and the other is seeing what happens if it's buried, and we're actually going to just test the efficacy of both of those together. Yeah. Hey.
I came 8 years ago and we had 2 designers and a lot of engineers. Well, how's the ratio changed between design and engineering over time? How's that affected your work?
Yeah, good question.
Like 4 years ago.
Yeah, I was not one of those 2. I'm actually the second oldest designer here now. When I came here, I think there were 300 people, and now there's about 1,200, 1,100 people. It depends what team you're on. So a very user-focused, product-focused team, perhaps the ratio is 1 designer to 4 or 5 engineers and a PM. But for more internal tools, you could have 10 engineers per designer. And I think that's kind of the cadence that we found, is that a lot of internal tools, you don't necessarily have to have specifically designed applications. We also create a system around, we call it Jetport, that you can spin up applications that are kind of like designed with designers in mind, but also engineers can have a little bit more agency. So it kind of depends on which application. So just as a backup, we have many, many applications for customer service, doctors, our Oscar members. All those different audiences have different requirements of what perfect ratio, and I think it just depends which user group you're talking about.
So how formalized process to these ideas from individual contributors so that this allows introverts.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've actually found so much success with having our designers find opportunity because of what it's done for us in the organization, that it's a part of our rubric. So designers are leveled on their performance and how they can identify opportunity. And identifying opportunity doesn't mean that I'm about to go on stage in front of the whole company and pitch my idea. It means, hey, you mentioned to another PM, can we take a few hours? I had this really good idea, and can we get an analyst to help validate that? So it is a good question, but I think it's based on like who you're talking to, and it doesn't have to be you pitch to the whole company. You can just start with 1 or 2 people, and that's actually how we began. Is me and another engineer, another product manager were interested in it, and it slowly grew out of just people hearing about it.
So what are the suggestions when you're looking at the dream don't necessarily have to look at something like this to break out each of those milestones and test plan at time? Do you think that it runs the water too much to milestones while you have users?
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe one of my analysts would say that absolutely you need to do everything sequentially, but we have cheated a bit, and we do have parallel running experiments just because your user group might not be big enough. You know, at a company with millions of users, it's easy to run parallel one experiment at a time. You could get data in a day or 2. But if you have 10,000 users, 100 users, it's okay to kind of figure out what makes sense. I guess the biggest take is I don't think there's like one pure process. I think instead what I'd suggest is prioritize and see what has the biggest impact, and go from there. Yeah, she said, just for the room, to leverage your stakeholders after that. So yeah, absolutely. Take the piece of your data that really can pivot decisions and pitch that, absolutely. Cool.
All right, I have one. So for context for the audience, I'm really speaking on the Oscar, so please take that context. But I was at this roundtable discussion 2 months ago with a bunch of engineers, products, folks, designers, and one of the big questions that came up, that seems to be a universal pain point, was like, how do you get engineers and designers to work effectively together? Because it seems like engineers just want to do a thing and they want to help out designers and stuff, and I was just completely flabbergasted because if you're at Oscar, it seems like engineers are starved for designer attention. Super happy when designers show up and they actually come to work with the team. It just feels like so much more valuable to be committed to that collaboration. So like all that stuff that you're saying, I think it's good. It sounds great. It helps me understand how you're thinking about it. But like, what do you think? Do you think in your personal experience is that normal? What you're experiencing with Oscar, and like also like what are the new drivers?
Yes. So I think it really depends per designer. What has made me maintain an effective relationship with designers and engineers is that I literally sit next to them whenever I want something to be done. I just go up to them, hey, how's QA going? I do have a slight coding background where I can kind of talk the talk with them, but I really think background in programming or not, it's really important to just get to know them, work through problems together. Don't waterfall and drop a design on their desk and say, hey, this is it. What do you think? Go up to them with 3 iterations. Go up to them with 3 distinct directions. Get them in the room in the decision-making process. When you're wireframing, you're doing research. One of the most effective ways that I found to get engineers involved is actually to share my user testing research with them or have them take notes during an interview. Get them in the room and get them to really understand why what they're building is important, especially at Oscar, to hear different pain points from users about healthcare. I hope that answers your question. Cool.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.